Kara, this is as fired up as I've heard you lately.
It's not that fired up, but I'm trying to get people thinking about how we should have a privacy bill. I've been talking to a lot of people, talking to regulators, people in the Valley, citizens, and I managed to talk to Scott McNeely, who had that famous quote of, "You have no privacy, get over it." And so we took off from there. It's part of a privacy project that the New York Times is doing with a lot of really interesting insights into this area.
Yeah, they did, some phenomenal work and really framed it in new and interesting ways over the weekend. But what are the basic policy prescriptions now, at least as far as you're concerned?
Well, there's a lot, and that's what I wanted to start the debate, and that's what the whole project is about. It's not just people who think there should be a privacy law. There's people that don't. There's going to be lots of industry figures that are going to weigh in on it. And obviously, it's a big topic. Look, Apple's recent advertising was all around privacy. You know what I mean? Like, nobody can be inside my iPhone kind of thing. And so everybody's discussing it and wondering where it's going. And I did an interview late last week with Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and she talked about the concept, too, of wanting to figure out what the right legislation is, where you can balance innovation with the fact that these companies have so many tentacles into people's lives and in many cases are abusing that privilege. What do we do about it, and how do we go about it and not ruin things for everybody, this great industry.
Yeah, Kara, I'm glad you brought up that interview, because you also asked her whether these companies should be allowed to buy more things, and certainly they have been on a spending spree in recent years, the bigger getting bigger, essentially. What was her response to that?
Not so much. I think she's going to look at it, she's a politician, so it's a case-by-case basis. But I think you get the feeling in Washington that it's going to be very difficult for these big companies to be buying things, and everybody's talking about antitrust. I also spoke in front of the House Democrats, and a lot of the questions, including from all kinds of representatives, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was about the power of these companies and the invasiveness of them. And so it was a really interesting discussion to hear from them, just in a casual setting. But what's really interesting is what kind of bill should it be, if there's going to be a bill, because there's a California bill that's coming online in 2020. There's 10 state bills happening in this country. There's obviously what's going on in Europe. There's going to be a whole lot more going on in New Zealand and Australia and that area. And so the question is, what will the U.S. do? And what is the privacy bill that's appropriate for these global internet companies with a lot of power, most especially Facebook and Google? And so I'm not looking for onerous regulation, but there needs to be some sort of guardrails from these companies, which have had actually no regulations since they were born, 20 years ago.
Yeah, Kara, I realize we have a new composition in Congress this year after those elections last fall, but I think back to testimony, Zuckerberg's testimony last year, and then tech CEOs and executives on the Hill again during the summer. And what I think had been the takeaway for many viewers and many investors were a lot of these lawmakers don't necessarily understand the business models and what these companies do. Do you feel like that has changed, that has shifted as regulations and this focus on privacy has really moved to the forefront?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them that did. It just was those hearings were kind of ridiculous, if you know what I mean. It was sort of lowest common denominator there. But there's a lot of regulators that do know what to do, and I think they've regulated lots of things. They regulate chemical companies, they regulate banks, they regulate phone companies. This is not, they don't have to be, the staff does know it, who's going to be running this stuff, and they are interested in it, and obviously it's a concern. The power of these companies. Never have so many billionaires run around unfettered in history. You know what I mean? In terms of, and have a lot of your information. And you don't want to be, screaming about it, but at the same time, there has to be responsible regulation to keep these powerful companies from abusing the data that they are entrusted with. That's not an unreasonable thing to ask. And so the question is, what should it be? And how should it go? Should it be like California's law? Should it be more like Europe's law? And again, they're going to get laws all over the world, and the privacy is linked with safety, is linked with cyber hacking, is linked with all kinds and hate speech. So it's all linked together in a way. But I think guardrails is how I look at it.
Kara, you sort of address in your column levels of personal responsibility that consumers need to think about, right?
Sure.
So we've talked to Walt about how he deleted Facebook. On Friday, we talked to Jason Calacanis about not buying voice assist. Are those things, are you warning consumers not to do those things?
Sure. It depends on what people want. If they want to share, what I want is transparency from these companies. Sure, people should be responsible with the way they use things, but it's like cigarette smoking. Warnings were nice, not just nice. These were dangerous things that people were, or sugar, or Seatbelts, you know, after unsafe at any speed, they put in seatbelts. It's not up to the consumer to tie themselves into a car. Like, you know what I mean? These companies have to have guardrails. And so in some cases you should have control. In other cases you should be fully aware that what they do is do things to addict you to these screens. And we all know, Carl, you know, me and my relationship with my phone is well known as yours and stuff like that. And so you have to really, you know, they're making a lot of money off of consumer data, and so they have to deal with it responsibly. And again, I don't think that's unreasonable in any way, shape, or form.